President Cyril Ramaphosa has determined 29 May as the date for the 2024 General National and Provincial elections. The announcement is in accordance with Section 49 of the Constitution of South Africa, read with Section 17 of the Electoral Act of 1998. The President says, in line with Section 17 of the Electoral Act 73 of 1998, he has also consulted with the Independent Electoral Commission on the election date. Furthermore, Ramaphosa has convened a meeting with all 9 provincial premiers and the IEC to discuss the state of readiness for the general elections. The 2024 elections coincide with South Africa's celebration of 30 years of freedom and democracy. Therefore, President Ramaphosa has called on all eligible voters to fully participate in this important and historic milestone of South Africa's democratic calendar. All right, and on that note, let's get you some reaction now to the President's announcement. And first up, we have the IEC, and we have Masego Sheburi from the IEC. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sheburi, this evening here in SABC News. I mean, this leaves us to one point of just asking you, as the IEC, will you be ready to have those elections on the 29th of May?
Good evening, Bali. Certainly, we will be ready, and we welcome the announcements because it creates certainty for us. It creates certainty for those who want to participate as contestants, be they on party list or as independents. But also, the President announced the date following consultation with the Commission because that is a statutory requirement. And at that point, the President ought to have satisfied himself that we are indeed ready to deliver the election, and hence the announcement that 29 May will be the date on which men and women will go out to the voting station to exercise their choice.
And Mr. Sheburi, this year's elections will be slightly different because we will be having independent candidates. So what will go into your preparations for these elections?
2 critical factors. The President has announced the date. He has not yet formalize that by way of proclamation. So between today and the date on which he proclaims, which we anticipate will be on Friday the 23rd, those persons who are still unregistered still have an opportunity to do so online or update their details or do so during working hours at our offices. That's the first thing. 2, the Commission will, following proclamation by the President and Premiers, consult with the Party Liaison Committee to derive an election timetable. And as the name suggests, a timetable will contain all the activities and the timeline by which those activities need to happen. So that will be our roadmap towards the election. The elections will be different because for the first time, independent candidates or candidates that are not associated with political parties will be able to contest and stand for election to the legislatures as well as for seats in the National Assembly. The 4th important thing which impacts voters is that in this election, it will not be competent for a person who is not registered at the voting station to ask to vote at that station. People who will be away from their voting station will have to give us pre-notification in terms of the time that we'll publicize in the timetable so that we can make arrangements at the receiving voting station. So I think those are the critical elements in preparations for these elections.
And given that we know that there's so many political parties who have registered for these elections, many South Africans are also asking themselves, have you given much thought to how that ballot paper will look like this year?
We do not know how the ballot paper will look like because with each election, the number of competing parties increase. For this election, we will also have independent, and their numbers are still indeterminate because candidate nomination is yet to open. We have, however, concluded all our procurement arrangements. We have anticipated what we think will be the various ballot paper permutations so that once we finalize candidate nomination, we will be able to print in the immutable window period that we have to print ballots and make those available first in our missions overseas for those who will be voting abroad, but more importantly to those who will be voting in the country, that come the date of the election will have all election materials, including ballot papers, in requisite numbers at correct locations at all voting stations.
Mr. Sheburi, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Masego Sheburi. He is from the IEC. And of course, they're talking about those preparations which will now get underway to ensure that those elections and which have been announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa to take place on the 29th of May will indeed take place. But as you heard from Mr. Sheburi, first the president needs to proclaim those elections. And we've heard there saying that that will most likely take place on Friday. Let's move on to give you more reaction. I understand now we have somebody from the PAC who's going to give us their reaction. Sir, good evening to you and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Give us your reaction to that date which has been announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Thank you, and thanks to all the viewers of SABC. As a PAC, we welcome the announcement and we are quite ready. Next week, Saturday, we are launching our election manifesto on the 2nd of March in Soweto. So we welcome the announcement that's made by the President and call on all South Africans to go out in their numbers before the proclamation date to still register and ensure that they vote in the next elections.
And how prepared were you a number of South Africans had predicted that indeed the elections will be taking place in May. Did you also predict it in that manner?
Definitely. We are involved with even the Electoral Commission. We attend their meetings and all of us have been projecting that they are likely to happen in the month of May. As we know, the other 2 months, June, July, and August are windy and it's winter season. So the best month would have been May.
All right. Thank you so much for that reaction. That is the PAC's Secretary General there giving us his insight in terms of the date in which has been announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa, that date being the 29th of May this year. And that's when the general and national elections will be taking place in South Africa. Let's continue to give you more reaction. And good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us this evening here on SABC News. Brett, what is your reaction to that announcement in which we saw this evening from President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Good evening, buddy. I mean, I think like most South Africans, most political parties, the media, the political analysts, I think we all welcome the fact that we now know what date the election is going to be. And I think for many of us, we are relieved that it's not a date that's deep into the winter. I mean, it is a symbolic and significant election, 30 years post-democracy, and there are a number of new political players that will be entering the battlefield for ideas and to convince voters to support them. So it's going to be a highly contested election. There's 100 days to go until the election is held, and the president's announcement today certainly ends the speculation and allows us all to work with certainty and to plan around a date. So we welcome the announcement of the date.
And Brett, that's what a number of political parties have been saying and have been calling on the president to announce the date, because most of them have been wanting to prepare for the elections. How prepared is your party now that we have seen that the date has been announced?
Well, in 2019, we literally launched at this time. So we only had 3 months in which to contest and prepare and plan for a major election, our first major election. And we were one of only 2 new parties on the ballot paper that actually got elected into parliament. This time we've had more time to plan and prepare. And so our preparations are at a fairly advanced stage. But I think like most political parties, when it comes to elections, you always need a little more time. But I think that the 29th of May is a good date for the elections for South Africa. It's not deep into the winter, which we were worried about because that would suppress turnout. So we're looking forward to a good turnout from voters. And again, like other parties, we take the opportunity to remind voters or unregistered South Africans that they can still register to vote before this date is proclaimed.
And what is your advice to South Africans, especially during this time now that we actually have a date which has been announced by the president?
My advice to South Africans is, first of all, to make sure that they're registered to vote and to make sure that they understand the new rules, which is that you need to vote at the voting station where you are registered to vote, so usually where you live, and to pay attention to what parties are offering and not to be seduced by old habits and old parties promising the same old things and delivering nothing. I think voters have had 30 years of democracy to look back on and to reflect on what has changed, whether their lives have improved as has been promised. And if there hasn't been change in their lives, and if they don't believe that South Africa is reaching its full potential, their vote is not something they give away, it's something that they should use to effect change. And I would ask voters to consider how they can use their vote to improve their lives and the lives of other South Africans.
Brett, thank you so much for your time. That is Brett Harron. He is the Secretary General for the Good Party. Let's move on now to Al-Jama. And I understand that we have Hanif Hendricks on the line. He is the President of Al-Jama. Hanif, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let's get your reaction to that announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa on the date of the elections.
Good evening to your listeners. I hope now that I have an opportunity to vote for Al-Jama. We are very happy that the President has announced a date. We worked on the 22nd of May, so it's an extra week. Our posters are at the printers. We're collecting it. All our leaders from the 9 provinces, they are coming to the Bull Cup in Cape Town at the flag on Friday. So this weekend we are going to just finalize the logistics. So Al-Jama is well prepared for the elections. We were very active during the voter registration. We've already started with voter education in all 9 provinces. And we look forward to doing quite well in the elections on actually the 27th of May, because as you know that there are special votes 2 days before the official date of the 29th. So we are preparing for the 27th of May and the 28th, and then obviously the big day is the 29th. We'd like to thank the IEC for making sure that the country is ready for the elections, and also the 9 premiers who did an audit, and we are now very confident that we will have an exciting election, free elections. And we wish every political party well going forward.
And Mr. Hendricks, are you relieved that while you plan for the elections, that you finally are working on a specific date and you know exactly how your plans should be leading up to the elections?
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy that we now can do the roadmap. We can now work out the finer details, which we are doing on Friday after the Friday prayers in the Bull Cup. And we already had our prayer meeting last week where in Makassar, where Islam was founded, with 50 imams. And we have our plan to remove the DA from the Western Cape, and we also have our plan to increase our representation in Parliament and also in more than the 1 province that we have at the moment.
All right, Mr. Hendricks, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Hanif Hendricks. He is the president of the Al-Jama Party. I understand now we are joined by Mtumseni Ntuli. He is from the ANC and he is the head of elections. Mr. Ntuli, thank you so much for your time this evening. Let's get your reaction as the ANC on the announcement there by President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you and the viewers at home. Yes, of course, indeed, the ANC warmly welcomes the decision by President Cyril Ramaphosa for the election to take place on the 29th of November. This is obviously, as you know, a very historic moment for our country, where we would be celebrating 30 years of our democracy, an important milestone for any country that is under construction like South Africa. And the call that we wish to make as the African National Congress is to all patriotic South Africans to stand up and be counted and participate on the elections of the 29th of May as declared by the African National Congress. On our side as the ANC, we are ready and prepared. As you would know that, and the viewers at home very well understand that we are launching our elections manifesto this coming weekend. So the message to our forces on the ground and all supporters of the ANC is that we are ready, and the president has announced the date, therefore my show.
And of course, you're touching on the fact that you will be holding your manifesto this weekend. Perhaps also just let us know, how prepared are you? Because, I mean, you are the ruling party, and you will be fighting to retain your position in the country. How ready are you in terms of the roadmap to actually campaign for these elections?
We are very, very prepared. I mean, we started laying the foundation early last year when we were conducting the assessment of our election machinery throughout the country and strengthening areas where there were certain challenges which were identified. We are now at a point where we have assembled the best available team to lead and to coordinate the election campaign in different parts of our country and in all our 9 provinces. We now understand very well that as we go to the launch of the manifesto this coming weekend, where the president is going to be outlining the battle plan of the African National Congress, where to from here, having traveled for the past 30 years to be where we are today. The president tomorrow, on this coming weekend, is therefore going to say to the nation and the supporters of the ANC, this is how far we've come and this is where we're going. So there's no question and no doubt about the fact that the ANC is ready and prepared to confront these elections. And as we have said it before, South Africans, we know that it's the ANC that will be able, as it has done in the past, to present to the nation a convincing plan about the ongoing task of the reconstruction and development of our country. So we are ready, we are prepared. And when the president communicated the date, all that came to our minds was that the battle begins, and my Hlome, let's go forward.
Mr. Ntuli, thank you so much for your time.